The storm had been brewing for days, black clouds piling like mountains above the lowlands, thunder shaking the windows of the old farmhouse. Clara Jennings stood by the window, her hand pressed to the glass as the rain began to fall in sheets. She watched the wagon roll away down the flooded road, her father, mother, and two younger brothers inside, shouting that she should come with them, but she couldn't. The old horse, Daisy, had fallen in the stable that morning, and Clara couldn't leave her behind. She'd grown up with that horse. She'd learned to ride on her back when she was barely tall enough to reach the stirrup, so she told her family to go ahead. The waters were rising and they needed to get to safety. Clara, her father shouted through the roar of rain. "Don't be a fool, come on. I'll catch up." She yelled back, clutching her coat tight around her shoulders. That was 2 hours ago. Now, the floodwaters had turned the yard into a brown river. The fence posts vanished beneath the swirling current. The barn creaked under the force of the wind. And still, Clara stayed, kneeling beside Daisy, whispering softly, "It's all right, girl. You'll be fine. Just stand up, please." But the Mare couldn't move. Her leg was broken. Clara's heart twisted as lightning flashed, illuminating the world in a cold silver glare. She was alone. The water was inching higher. Seeping beneath the door of the house, she thought of the cowboy who lived 5 miles away, Luke Rourke, the quiet man who ran cattle for her father sometimes. He was the kind of man who spoke little but did much. She remembered his calm gray eyes, the way he always tipped his hat and said, "Evenin', Miss Clara," like it actually meant something, but he was far away, and no one was coming. She tried to drag a few bags of grain upstairs, tried to build a barricade by the door, but the water came faster than her hands could work. When the first floor began to flood, she realized she'd made a terrible mistake. Then came a sound, a deep, distant rumble, not thunder this time, but hooves. Clara froze. She pressed her ear to the window, straining to hear over the rain. There it was again, hooves splashing through mud and water dot, and then through the gray blur of rain. She saw him, Luke Rourke, drenched to the bone, his hat lost to the storm, urging his big bay horse through chest-deep water. "Luke?" She breathed, pressing her hands to the glass. He saw her. Even through the storm, she knew he did, because he raised one hand and spurred his horse faster. When he reached the porch, the current nearly swept him and his horse away. He dismounted, tied the reins to a post that barely stood above the water, and climbed up the slick wooden steps. "Clara," he shouted through the wind. "You in there?" She rushed to the door, pulling it open. Water spilled in around her boots. "Luke, you can't be here. The river's come up too high." "I know," he said, his breath hard and fast. "Your pa told me you stayed behind. Said you wouldn't leave that horse." Her throat closed. "Daisy's hurt. I couldn't. I know. He stepped closer, gripping her shoulders. "But listen to me. We've got to go. Now." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I can't leave her, Luke. I can't." He looked past her into the dark barnyard where the horse lay. The water was nearly up to the stable roof. "If we don't go now," he said quietly, "neither of us will make it." She swallowed hard. "I thought I could save her." He took her hand, rough and warm despite the cool rain. "You already did. You stayed when no one else would. That means something. But now it's time to save yourself." For a long moment, all she could do was stare at him, this man who had ridden through a flood for her. Then, nodding weakly, she turned to follow him. They climbed onto his horse together, Clara clinging to Luke's back as he guided the animal through the swirling brown water. The current was fierce. Tree branches floated by like spears. Every so often, lightning lit the path ahead, a blur of fences, broken wagons, and debris. Clara's teeth chattered as she leaned close to his ear. "You shouldn't have come back for me." He didn't answer right away. Then his voice came low and steady. Didn't have much choice. She frowned, her hands tightening around his coat. Why? Because I wouldn't sleep a night in my life knowing you were still out here. Her heart thudded, not just from fear, but from something deeper. Something that had been there for a long time, but she'd never dared to name. Hold on, he said suddenly. Bridge up ahead's gone. They veered left, following the ridge of higher ground. The rain stung their faces. The horse slipped, caught itself, then lunged forward again. Almost there, Luke said. We'll make for the old schoolhouse. It's on a rise. But the next moment, a wall of water came roaring down the valley. A surge from the river, breaking its banks completely. Luke! Clara screamed as the horse stumbled. Hang on! He yelled out. The water hit them full force, knocking both rider and horse sideways. Clara's world spun. She went under cold, black water, swallowing her whole. She couldn't see, couldn't breathe. Then a hand grabbed her arm, strong and unyielding. Luke pulled her up, his grip iron tight. Clara, look at me. She gasped, choking on muddy water. He dragged her onto a half-submerged log, holding her steady as the current rushed past. You all right? He shouted over the roar. She nodded weakly, coughing. I think so. He scanned the horizon. We're close. You see that ridge? That's where we're headed. He half carried her the rest of the way, through water up to his chest, refusing to let go even when the current nearly swept them off their feet again. By the time they reached the rise. Both of them were shivering and soaked, but alive. The rain still fell, but the ground beneath them was solid. They collapsed near the old schoolhouse steps, breathing hard. Luke pulled off his coat, wringing it out before draping it over her shoulders. Thank you, Clara whispered. He met her eyes, his expression unreadable. You've done the same. She smiled faintly. You don't know that. Yes, I do, he said. You stayed for that horse. You'd best stayed for anyone you cared about. The words caught her off guard. And why'd you come back? He looked away toward the valley below, where the floodwaters churned. Because there's no one else I'd ride through a storm for? For a moment, the world seemed to go still, just the sound of rain on the tin roof, the faint flicker of lightning far away. Clara reached for his hand. I thought I was strong enough to stay, she said softly. But when I saw you coming through the rain, he turned toward her, his face close enough for her to see the drops clinging to his lashes. What? She swallowed. I realized I didn't want to be alone anymore. Luke's jaw tightened. You're not. He helped her inside the schoolhouse, where a few dry blankets and lanterns had been stored long ago. He lit one, the flame casting a soft golden glow across the room. They sat close together, sharing the warmth of a single blanket. Outside, the river raged on, but inside there was quiet, just their breathing and the soft crackle of the lantern. Your family'll be safe, he said. Waters'll go down in a few days. She nodded. And Daisy? Her voice broke. He squeezed her shoulder gently. You gave her peace. That's more mercy than most folks ever give. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't mean to be foolish. You weren't, he said. You were brave. Foolishness runs away. Bravery stays behind. For a long time, they sat in silence, the storm beginning to ease. The clouds thinned just enough to show a pale hint of dawn. When she finally rested her head against his shoulder, Luke didn't move away. You came through the flood for me, she murmured, half asleep. Why risk everything? His voice was quiet, rough as gravel. 'Cause you're worth it. And for the first time in her life, Clara believed it. When the sun rose the next morning, the valley below was a lake of gold and brown. The farmhouse was gone, the fences washed away. But on the ridge, the schoolhouse still stood, its roof shining wet in the light, smoke curling from a small fire inside. Luke saddled his tired horse again, preparing to ride out and find her family. Clara helped him tighten the straps, her hand brushing his. "You'll come back?" she asked softly. He looked at her, eyes warm beneath his hat. "You think I'd ride through a flood and not come back?" She smiled, small, tired, but real. He reached out, brushed a strand of wet hair from her cheek, and said, "Next time the water rises, you call for me first." "I will," she promised Dot as he rode off down the ridge. The morning sun breaking through the clouds. Clara watched him go, knowing that whatever the flood had taken, something far stronger had been left behind. Love, courage, and the man who came back for her when everyone else fled.